Welcome back to the Wise Divine Woman podcast, where we help you go from fed up to faith fueled, helping you to become the wise divine women that you've been called to be. Today, I have Elizabeth Gaines, Education Director, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, and I am fangirling here. So she, to me, has been such an amazing teacher and sort of that behind the scenes mentor, listening how she really puts everything's together. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here, Dana.
Yeah, thank you. What brought you to the journey where you are now? Like such incredible responsibility, but I know it has probably been a journey. Like talk about that. Tell us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that end up being health coaches or some kind of functional practitioner or in the alternative wellness world did not start off to be that. We came from a different area of life and a different experience and ran ourselves into the ground health-wise and came up with some sort of health condition that standard medicine couldn't address. And so for me, I started off as a lighting designer for theater. So I lived in New York City for a long time. I was working 18-hour days. I was barely having enough money to live. I was food insecure for a long time, housing insecure for a long time, just trying to kind of make it from one gig to the next. And then I decided, okay, this is crazy. Let's redirect. Let's do something else. And I wound up going back to grad school for international affairs in human rights and wound up working for a nonprofit where I was serving victims of domestic minor sex trafficking. So women and young girls who were born in America who were under pimp control or otherwise commercial sex involved. And ended up there for about 10 years where I had terrible boundaries emotionally. And I think for a lot of people that wind up in these direct service roles, it's not as altruistic as it might seem. I think a lot of us are trying to see ourselves as humans that are worthy, of humans that are making an impact, of humans that deserve the life that we were given. Yeah. And I think a lot of us find ourselves in this place where we are trying to earn through our labor or through our impact the gift of life.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are there, we're never going to earn it back. Like there's never enough work. There's never enough impact to pay back the gift of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts us on this sort of a treadmill of like, let me just give it everything that I have. And so for me, when the girls would call me at 3:00 in the morning, I would go. When the girls were like, oh, can you just like hide some money for me? I would do it. All of these things to help them, but really trying to help me, trying to
To fulfill
yeah.
those needs and desires that you thought were necessary for your existence.
Exactly. And so I started to develop just a real malaise with life of like, oh God, I'm not looking forward to getting up. I'm not looking forward to going into the office. I'm not looking forward to what the day has to give. I'm not as focused as I used to be. I'm not recovering from stress as well as I used to. And I think that in our society, it's really common to come to this place in our late 30s, early 40s, where a lot of us are just like, I'm just tired. I'm tired and I'm not happy. I'm not motivated. And so you go to the doctor. You go to the doctor and the doctor says, this is not physical. This is in your head. And so you are left to wonder, am I sick or do I just hate my life? And I think a lot of us come to this intersection and the doctor reinforces this idea that you're not sick and that you do just hate your life.
Yeah. Or it's normal.
Or it's normal. Yeah.
You're perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah, you're perfectly normal. It's nothing wrong. It's all in your head. You need an antidepressant. Yeah. And so I think that that's where a lot of us actually end up is believing that this is just the natural culmination of this beautiful gift of life that we are given, is to wind up feeling really ambivalent about it, hating where we are, not able to move forward and not feeling our best. That's just the natural culmination. And it's really antithetical, I think, to the beauty of the gift of life for most of us to end up in this place.
I think there's many women that get to this place. And in most cases, the women that I see is like, we're beyond 50. So there's less 10-year, you know, backpedaling that we have to do. And it is a struggle. Like,
Yeah.
it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I bought into this whole, like, it's just you. It's just like everybody else is crushing it out there. It's just you who's feeling this way. It's just you who can't hack it. It's just you who are depressed or whatever. So I got on the antidepressants, didn't help at all.
Yeah.
I'm like gaining weight, have no libido, problems with intimate partner, like all of it. And so, yeah. And so I was like, God, it's just this can't be life. You know? So you go and you talk to, older people or your parents, and they're like, yeah, this is life.
Yeah.
This
It's
is
terrible.
like,
Terrible.
this is what it's about, is just surviving adulthood. It's like, wow, this is awful. And so I just continued actually to get sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker until finally it could not be denied that it was physical. And for me, I think that was the blessing, where it was like, I actually can't get out of bed for longer than a couple of hours every day. This is not normal. And even though I'm still going to the doctor and the doctor's like, I don't know, I'm just not seeing, there's nothing here. It's not showing up as a disease. It was clear to me that it was physical. And so I was then able to advocate for myself, because I had moved past this intersection of, is it me or am I sick, into I'm absolutely sick and you just can't figure it out.
Right.
And that's what started me on my own wellness journey. And I think I probably started off in a place where a lot of your listeners started off, and maybe you also started off, Dana, in this cycle of trial and error, where it's like, let me just try everything. Let me listen to all the podcasts. Let me buy all the gadgets. Let me buy all the supplements. Let me try all the diets. Let me do all the crazy exercises. And none of it provided lasting or impactful relief. Some of it would help for a minute, but then it would stop working. Some of it would work for a little. It made a little bit of a difference, but not much. And a lot of it made me worse.
So true. So
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this sort of like reinforces the shame of it, where it's like, yeah, this is just me. This is just like everybody, this worked for my friend, or this diet worked for this person, or this person got on a podcast and talked about how this was revolutionary for them. And so it took me a while to get to FDN. It took me a few years, but FDN's mentality is so different, where it says, look, this problem that you've arrived at, and for me, it was chronic fatigue, but for other people, it's all of these issues of just can't focus and depressed and can't digest well, and menopausal issues and all of the perimenopause hormonal roller coaster, all of it, insomnia, whatever it may be. FDN says, look, this is not single sourced. So it's not going to be fixed with a supplement or a gadget or a diet or a thing. Like, it didn't come from one place. And so that was revolutionary to me. It's one of those things that you kind of think to yourself in the dark hours of like, well, how can is it really just one thing? But everything out there is like, take this and it'll fix it. It's your hormones, or it's your cortisol, or like, there's just one thing. And so take this thing and it'll fix it. You doubt that. You doubt your own wisdom on that. But once I got to FDN and they're like, yeah, it's not single sourced, it sort of lit me up like a light bulb, because it was what I had sort of always suspected, but never had the language for, and never had the validation of that point of view. So it was just revolutionary for me.
And I think I had been looking at FDN for a couple of years, and I was always in the wheelhouse of things, because with what I do, and I'm always like, there has to be a reason for that, or there has to be a test for that, or, there has to be these things. And it just really solidified that, okay, I'm not way out in left field with these questions, because I question things. There has to be a root cause, or there has to be not a singular root cause, but there has to be a start somewhere, and the snowball just keeps rolling. So, and I think that's really where it was like, you know what, this makes perfect sense. And now with what I do with thermography, I'm able to assist in answering some questions or advising them much wiser in moving forward, right? And or getting them to have better language with their own practitioners. So it's a very multifaceted solution. I'll say solution because it's never really a quick solution in that. But I have truly appreciated the training with Functional Diagnostic Nutrition and FDN And I think it's probably evolved, and now it will always evolve, right?
It will always evolve. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We are constantly updating the course. We just released an update for our supplement module where we sort of overhauled the way that we teach it. We're constantly listening to feedback from our trainees and constantly looking at new science and saying, okay, what do we need to change and how do we need to shift? But even throughout that process, the core foundational ideas never change.
They never change, and
Yeah.
I love that, and even when I was going through the oral exam, or prepping for the oral exam, I'm like, yeah, like that dress, which is a foundational protocol or idea with FDN, it's just so simple,
Yeah, it is.
and it's a lifetime skill, right?
It is.
It's fabulous to see, or, like, mind-blowing that it actually makes changes.
Yeah, it is amazing. And to catch the audience up, the dress that Dana is referring to is the protocol that we teach at FDN, which is going to be the same for every single client. We're going to look at the diet that is right for them. We're going to look at rest. Nobody looks at rest. Nobody looks at rest. So we're going to see, how are the sleep habits? What's going on pre-sleep? What are the breaks like during the day? All of that is really, really important. Then E for exercise. We have to be exercising commensurate to the amount of money that we have in our vital reserve bank account. So if we're like really tired all the time, but we're doing CrossFit 5 days a week, we're spending way too much on exercise and we're not getting the benefit of it anymore. Now it has become another stressor and a big spender of vital reserve. So we want to make sure that if I'm exhausted, that I'm doing exercise that is supportive of protecting my energy. And not that I have to stay there forever, not that I'm just going to like only walk a mile every day forever, but that while I'm in this healing process, I'm only spending exactly what I need to on exercise and not more, so that there's money in the bank to go upstream for healing.
Mhm.
Then we've got our first S, which is stress reduction. Also, nobody talks about this. And I think it's because we think of stress as inevitable in our world. And so I think a lot of us practitioners shy away from having our clients or ourselves do an honest inventory of how much stress there is in our lives because we don't have an easy answer for it. But in the end, as health coaches, and whether we're not life coaches, we're not business coaches, we're not relationship therapists, but we do have to tell the truth about the cost of stress on health and how much that stress is costing out of our vital reserve bank accounts. And so we look at stress in a very detailed way. And then that last S is supplementation. So what are we not getting out of food? How can we support or stimulate systems which are out of balance? And how can we self-treat whatever pathogenic overgrowth we might have?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's and then it's always this retraining or teaching and educating, not retraining, teaching and educating the client in front of you to apply that every day. Like, am I getting rest today? How's my diet today? Am I breathing? Am I exercising and moving? How's my stress load? And it's just this, it becomes an automatic check for yourself every day. And that's really the goal, is to educate the clients to become healers themselves and be far more self-aware, and then always, have that tool belt filled of skills, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Education is a huge piece of how we train our practitioners to operate with their
Mm.
clients. We want our clients to not need us eventually, to be able to say, like, okay, this new symptom has popped up. What do I need to do? How do I actually improve my own DRESS to deal with that? And of course, we're always there and able, but I think that's one of the major things that sets FDN apart. And in fact, we have so many trainees come into the program because they worked with an FDN. I don't know of anyone else who's like, oh, I worked with a functional medicine doctor, so now I'm going to go to functional medicine school. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. Yeah. And that's a testament to how well our practitioners are out there doing the education piece.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. You guys have really done and worked really hard at really being clear on the modules or the teaching syllabus, and each step is meticulously thought through in the
Hmm.
progression of what is trained and
Hmm.
how we learn it, right? And I think it's just been amazing, really. So in the supplement, aspect of things. Should people be like, so for the listeners out there, like, what is the FDM belief when it comes to supplementation in and that? Because to me, that this is how I work. I did before I got into FDM, but it's hard for people to grasp their heads around it when it comes to supplementation because there are so many people out there with thousands of dollars of supplements in their cupboards. Makes me crazy.
Yeah, this is a great question, Dana. And I think I will start answering that question in a different place and
Yeah,
work
no,
around
please.
to supplements. Yeah. So a lot of health coaches out there, a lot of practitioners out there are not dealing with the full DRESS. They are maybe dealing with diet, maybe exercise, maybe supplementation, maybe all three, maybe just two of those three, certainly not the full DRESS. And what's important to recognize is that supplementation takes on an inflated importance with every client I've ever worked with because it has become a handy corollary to prescription drugs. And standard medicine has taught us that prescription drugs are the answer because they are how you get rid of your symptoms. They are how you resolve symptoms, whether or not it's resolving the root cause. And so when we really break that down, prescription drugs are nature times 1,000. They have a lot of power to bust through a symptom without requiring lifestyle change. And this is why doctors are not trained to ask what the lifestyle is about, is because they know they can bust through the symptom with the prescription drug. It's nature times 1,000. Now that comes with a lot of crap. That comes with chemicals. It comes with side effects. It comes with all of this sort of unnatural burden. But because it is so concentrated and powerful, it can get through the symptom without significant lifestyle change. So when you come to a functional practitioner and they're making all of these lifestyle changes, you kind of are half listening to everything but the supplementation because in your mind, you're trained that like the pill is really the thing that's going to get through the symptom. But the problem with thinking about supplementation that way is that supplementation is nature times 10, nature times 20, nature times 100, kind of at the outset of that. And it is not enough to bust through the symptom without making other lifestyle changes. It just simply isn't enough. And that's one of the reasons we think of it as supplemental. It's not the whole ball of wax the way that a prescription drug would be. And so that's the first lens that I want to give about the way FDN thinks about supplementation. It is 20% of the program. And that is because you are going to get nowhere with supplementation alone. It is simply not powerful enough. It is not pharmacology. It's not a prescription drug. So the other thing to note about that is that we at FDN do not want you to be on supplements for the rest of your life. We want you to be able to graduate from that and have optimal function within your body without these supplemental cues. So the one exception to that is our category called substitution. And that is because our soils are not the same as they were 100 years ago. They're not the same as they were 50 years ago. We are having to basically put IVs into the soil of all of these inputs to make the soil grow anything because we've beaten the soil so hard and we don't let them rest and there isn't regenerative agriculture and all of the things. And I'm not saying that that movement isn't out there. It's just not the mainstream.
Not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So like when it is, great. We can stop taking substitution. But for the moment, they've even done studies to show that organic fruits and vegetables, for the most part, don't have more nutrients. They just have less pesticides.
Yeah. It's very true. Very true.
Yeah. And so we are still sort of fundamentally missing a piece of nutrition that our bodies are expecting from the food that we eat that simply isn't there. And that's what the substitution category of supplementation will do, is return that piece of missing nutrition. And that may be something that we have to take for a lifetime in the form of a multivitamin or something like that, just to make sure that we're getting our nutritional needs met. Other than that, we're not trying to be on supplements forever. We're trying to be on supplements long enough to put some more money back in the body's bank account so it can go, okay, I'm on top of my debt now. I got it. And so our other categories are support and stimulation. And we do this based upon test results. So when we're looking at our functional testing, and I do want to caveat right now to talk about how a functional test is different from a diagnostic test. When you go to the doctor and the doctor says, I don't see anything wrong, what he's saying is you have not met the criteria for a specific disease. And it is really that which my whole treatment plan has to be based on is on a disease. Because then I go to the diagnostic book and I look it up, and the insurance is like, this is what you give for this. And then that's how it works. That's what you do. So it's drugs or surgery or a combination thereof. So when you don't meet those diagnostic criteria, you fall into this kind of a gray space where you don't feel well, but you're not technically sick. And that's how a lot of us show up to the doctor. That's certainly how I showed up to the doctor, where he was like, I don't know, I think you're just depressed, because I'm in this gray space where I'm not meeting the clinical definitions for a disease. So functional tests come in and they do really well in the gray space, because they are not asking, what disease do you have? They are instead asking, where has function been lost in your body and by how much? So out of 100% function, where are we at? 80, 70, 30? And in what specific areas has that been lost? And that's what makes it so powerful. As an FDN practitioner, I'm looking for loss of function. I'm not looking for a disease. I'm not looking for a diagnosis. I'm not looking for a specific health condition. I'm just wanting to get a general picture of where function has been lost. And now I can come in with targeted supplementation and stimulate some of those systems that are under functioning, or support some of those systems that are over functioning, and get everybody kind of back in balance along with other lifestyle changes. So that's really how we think about supplementation at FDN.
I think and that's how I really wanted to reinforce that. Yes, that's my thoughts as well. But it's hard to explain to people. And we've been, we've all been diet washed, and now we've all been sort of that supplementation washed as well. So I thank you so much for putting it so incredibly clear, and that it's not this, it's the whole picture.
It has to be the whole picture.
And
the supplements alone aren't going to get you
everything.
there. Yeah.
Everything about it. And even saying, you're just in menopause, or like, wow, okay, that's very broad. It's a big umbrella now, right?
It is.
And again, it doesn't matter. This one thing is not going to work for this menopausal symptom until you actually know what's going on behind the scenes from many different angles. It all may point some way, but again, you're identifying the opportunities of change to allow the body to work as it should, to naturally start to heal itself, and making things work better. And that is the absolute most wonderful approach that I have ever seen, because you are identifying. And I think that was the biggest thing for me was, with the testing being included in the program, incredible, right?
Yes.
Because, and learning about it, right? Because, in the past, you get all your blood work. I encourage people to get all their test results from their doctors, like teeth pulling. But it's like we should understand these things better.
Yeah.
And being able to see the GI stool map and the saliva hormone test and how that applies to you, it's so perfect, honestly. And the practicals were great too, where you're playing around and you're testing and having fun and really putting things to skill. But when it's you and you're living it, it really is.
Nobody is more interesting than ourselves, right?
Oh,
Nobody is more interesting than ourselves.
So amazing, honestly.
Especially when you're coming to the program with health issues, which most people are. And so having the testing included makes you your own first client, which is such a fantastic way. I mean, I feel like I improved my health hugely. It was so impactful. I improved my health hugely just within the program, just within the 6-7 months I was a trainee.
Right.
And I'm not saying I got all the way there, because that, the last sort of 30% is the hardest. But I made huge strides in replacing my energy and getting myself back on track and understanding how to take care of myself just in the 6 or 7 months that I spent in the program.
I think the biggest thing for me too was that because I made that full inventory right through the scorecard and the lifestyle
Yeah.
and the test results and the really great questions that were posed, then now post, you know, all the testing, all those things, when I'm starting to get a symptom, I step back for a second and go, okay, so what was it? What am I supposed to change? Like a little checklist I have in my own.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
someday I'll get everything tested again. But and it's so important because knowing hormones, knowing cortisol, right?
Yeah.
And I think the IP test, the with the mannitol and the lactolase, that's new, is that?
No, that's old. We
Is
now
it?
have the mucosal barrier assessment, which is the blood spot test, which is way easier to deal with than
Yeah.
the IP test. Yeah.
You just don't remember seeing that. And I was just popping it up when I was reviewing everything. I was like, where did that come from? But it was probably there. I just flew right over it. But I really loved how each of the tests and how Reed really broke everything down. And then when you're doing the follow ups, like with Dr. Gonchar out of IQ Fluids here in Ontario, or when you're doing those extra webinars and things like that, then it really all comes together.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just pulling all the pieces together really to help clients, see the bigger picture, but for yourself, linking why it's so important the tests that were chosen as part of the five, 6 tests that were
Yep.
there.
Yep. Um, I will come back to that point because that's a very important point. I want to go hit on something that you mentioned with the
Go ahead.
intake documents, yeah, with the metabolic chaos scorecard. So basically, we're going to test in 6 areas for everyone. Everyone gets 6 areas tested, and that is what we call our hidden. So hormones, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system. Those are our hidden. And the reason that we are testing all of this with everybody is that we recognize that a symptom can come from anywhere and it can be the same symptom for multiple things that are going wrong. So, for example, this fatigue symptom that a lot of people have and that I certainly had. It can come from sex hormones being low. It can come from sex hormones being high. It can come from cortisol being low. It can come from cortisol being high. It can come from digestion not being great. It can come from the immune system being low or high. You just don't know until you get in there and test it. And so we do not base test based on symptoms. And I think that's something that really sets the FDN methodology apart. We're going to test in all of these areas. And we're going to combine that with a self-assessment called the metabolic chaos scorecard. And so we're going to assess our own symptoms within each of these 6 categories and see over time how our scores in these areas change. Human baselines change very quickly. So it's hard to know when you're just thinking back, like, did I feel better 2 weeks ago? Or do I feel worse now? Did I feel worse then and I feel better now? It's really hard to know. So we do this assessment over time. And I will just tell you that recently I am still doing the metabolic chaos scorecard like every half a year on myself.
Good idea.
And I
Really good idea.
recognized I wasn't quite sure until I started seeing it in the metabolic chaos scorecard that my energy was going down, my attention was going down, my focus was going down. I was like, what is happening to me? And I'm doing all the dress, doing the DRESS, nothing's helping. And then I went for my annual dental checkup, and the dentist was like, oh, you have 2 insanely big abscesses in your upper teeth right next to your brain. And I don't know that I would have caught how much that was affecting my life and gone and looked for root causes of that, things that were different or changed without this constant sort of quantifiable check-in of how I am feeling. Yeah. Yeah. So it's very powerful. Yeah. Okay. So then with the testing, one of the brilliant things about FDN that I don't see anywhere else is that it gives you a framework for understanding how all of these different systems are talking to each other and how all of the test results are speaking to each other. Where you say, like, oh, okay, that's an interesting result, but I'm going to go here to get deeper insight on that. Or like, oh, do you agree? Oh, you don't agree. So that probably means that we need deeper insight in this place or this place to really understand what is happening. I think when we test according to symptoms, what happens is we get like 2 or 3 pieces of data that are all independent of each other. And we don't have a framework for understanding how to build bridges between them. And so they just become these isolated sort of islands of info that there is no bridge between. And then we have no choice as a practitioner but to do what we call treating the paper. Like, let me bring in some supplements to push this one this way. And let me bring in some supplements to push that way. And let me bring in some supplements to push this the other way. And there's no understanding of how it all relates and what bigger insights might come from that. And that's we would call that a lost healing opportunity. There's just too much left undiscovered to actually make a difference. And then when we start treating the paper, of course, we've really lost the plot. And that's why a lot of health practitioners who are using no testing or just sort of spot testing based on symptoms get it wrong and don't get predictably good outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always wonder that when talking with clients who are working with different integrative or functional practitioners, that they are not feeling better.
Oh, they're
And I'm like,
not.
in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm like, well, what questions did they ask and what
Yeah.
tests did they do?
Yeah.
And did they discuss it with you? So that training is just like getting there, right? It's
It's
just like,
in
what
there.
are the
Yeah.
questions, asking the right, understanding and solving. And so, and I think it's so important, like those aspects when you're looking at everything through the hidden. I think one of the questions that I really wanted to ask, if I may,
Please.
is why has FDN really incorporated the metabolic typing diet?
Yeah, because Reed recognizes that there's a lot of fad diets out there and that, a lot of practitioners are in love with one diet or another and they recommend it for everybody. So, there's all the keto camp out there, like everyone should be doing keto or everyone should be doing paleo or like everyone should be a vegetarian, everyone should be a vegan. And what we see is that the body loves change. The body loves change. So you make a change initially, it's going to go great. Like, it really doesn't even matter what the change is. It's going to go amazing for a little while because the body loves change. But then the body's going to hit a wall where it's like, this is not really the thing for me. This is not what my genetics are optimized for. And you're going to stop seeing results on it. And you're going to hit plateaus and you're going to hit valleys and you're going to lose everything that you gained in the initial sort of change.
Mm-hmm.
And so Reed started looking around and said, well, what is going on here? Why doesn't one diet work for everybody? And the answer is that if one diet worked for everybody, we would have figured it out by now. We would not still be 200,000 years later wondering what to eat. So the answer lies in our genetics. All humans evolved in Africa, of course, but then they moved. They migrated all over the planet, and there were different resources available in those different areas. So the genes got adapted to the resources that were available in that area. So if you think about it, like somebody living in India who is used to eating a lot of lentils and rice and maybe a little bit of meat here and there, is adapted very differently than like an Eskimo in Alaska who's used to like living on whale blubber and doesn't eat a lot of plants. Not a lot of plants are available. And so these two humans are both doing well on extremely different diets. So now we live in a world where everyone's moved around, everyone's mixed. It is impossible for me to just like look at my family line and be like, that's what I should eat. There's just too much.
There's too much. Yeah. Water under the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just too much sort of genetic influence. And even within that, within your own family, there can be dramatic differences. Like I do very well on a lot of meat. My brother is a vegetarian. He does very well on that. He would die eating all the meat that I eat. I would die not having all the protein, on his diet. So even within your own family, it's really hard to predict what the genetics are. So metabolic typing says, okay, we have a primary operating system, which is going to be either carb, protein, or mixed. Like you need both. And we got to find out what that primary operating system is for each person and then dial in their macronutrient ratios specifically based on that template. So
Mhm.
that's why Reed has introduced metabolic typing into the training.
And does it have, I mean, so this is all just fresh because I really just went over everything again for the third time. So just like, okay. And maybe it was a menopause brain as well, like it's difficult to retain everything, and that's why he always says do it 3 times. But because you have that extra hidden stressor, which is oxidative and free radical damage,
Yeah.
does what I found, or call me off if it's wrong in this thought process, that when we're looking at those homeostasis functional controls, or however that works, or homeostatic
Foundational
controls,
homeostatic controls. Yeah.
those controls are looking at things that we talk about in the metabolic diet, because we're talking about oxidation rate, or we recognize our oxidative rate or our sympathetic or parasympathetic disposition as well. So is that just coincidence?
Sorry, what is coincidence?
No, I mean, no. I know. I apologize. So does he find, or do we find that the metabolic type helps us balance better our homeostasis in the body, because
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah.
homeostatic controls, the innate control system of the body, we're addressing parasympathetic, the ANS, we're addressing
Yep.
different
So
things.
so here's the thing. I am deeply parasympathetic according to my metabolic typing test. This means I can have all the caffeine in the world. It does not affect me. I can go to sleep after having a cup of coffee. I like to nap. I need a lot of downtime. And it actually where it becomes unhealthy, because I think we sort of draw a line in our society where it's like sympathetic bad, parasympathetic good.
No, it's ebb and flow to me, but
Yeah, but where it becomes unhealthy is that parasympathetics, like those who favor the parasympathetic chain, have a hard time getting into sympathetic when necessary, i.e., a deadline, i.e., like how do I like get myself in gear to create a new module for the course, or whatever it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
Yeah, and so we want to eat a diet that strengthens the other side. So, because it's hard for me to get into sympathetic, then I need my diet to help push up my ability to be in sympathetic, because naturally I'm just parasympathetic. And so that's sort of also what we're looking at. And I think that with the metabolic typing as is, we'll say it'll give you an oxidative and it'll give you an autonomic reading.
right.
And a classic type sort of pairs the opposite autonomic and oxidative. And I think that that is the body's own attempt at creating homeostasis.
Right,
So,
right,
like the fast oxidizers are classically paired with parasympathetic. That's an attempt at homeostasis. The
right.
sympathetics are paired with slow oxidation. That's an attempt at homeostasis within the body itself. Yeah.
And I think if you really want to know more about that, then you best reach out to FDN. They'll have their free because we could talk
Absolutely.
forever, because, there is so much fascinating information with that. And it always just blew my mind going, wow, that makes so much sense. And why, why with previous testing, or for previous alternative testing, you could see free radical damage, or you could, all the fun stuff that you do. But now you're like, okay, you have the solution. You can see it, and you have the solution, and it creates this beautiful plan that makes it easy for clients, or easy for myself, makes sense for myself in that. And that's why it was just like, it was such a perfect fit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really helpful.
Yeah. So when is we have a new event coming up talking about FDN?
I'm
Or
sure
how can
we
people
do.
today reach out and get that? And I do, it's everywhere. I'll list where we can find everything in the podcast, or where Elizabeth speaks and all the different things like that. But where's the easiest way for people to really get the best information if they're looking at ways not only to heal themselves, but to educate themselves, to educate family and friends and assist that way, or to start a whole new career?
Yeah. So you can go to fdntraining.com. And I don't know when this podcast is going to drop, but we are doing a dress workshop next week.
Wonderful. Yeah. So
And we
good.
will in the coming weeks be doing one of our favorite workshops, which we call 5 labs in 5 days. And so we will be doing a case study where we'll look at one lab every day for 5 days, and really sort of break down the FDN method and look at the actual labs that we use.
Yeah, I think that that was a real good workshop because one, I didn't, when I first started, I had no idea what testing was going on.
Yeah.
And then you hear about these tests as a holistic coach and you don't no one really uses them because they don't know. But
Yeah.
then you guys broke them right down and that was
Hmm. Yeah.
just sold me on it. And I think it's just been so applicable and I can't wait to get going and start offering it to my clients and being part of their solutions. So I thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Amazing.
So I always finish with what is a word of wisdom or a words? I always say word of wisdom that you hold tight to for yourself.
I think something that my own health journey taught me is that I have to be invested in the outcome of my own life. It has to matter to me. If it doesn't matter to me, I'm not going to get out of my sick bed. If I'm relying on somebody else to find the solution, it's never going to work. If I'm relying on the doctor to figure it out, I'm lost. The outcome of my life has to matter to me.
That is incredible. That was like, of course.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Elizabeth, I can't thank you enough for being part of this podcast and educating me and helping me understand health and filling that desire to help others. Like it has been an incredible year. So I thank you so much.
Oh, well, it's been my pleasure to be here, Dana, and I'm so happy to
Yeah.
see you on the other side with FDN.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us on the Wise Divine Women podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes and I'll put in all the links of where you can hear Elizabeth speak more or join the different workshops that are available at Functional Diagnostic Nutrition Training. And I think you're in for an incredible journey if you jump in and really want to learn things. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being with me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.